All right, back with it and getting the latest in litigation against Illinois' gun ban. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. And we're talking with Todd Vandermyde, a former contract lobbyist for the National Rifle Association and all-around gun law guru in the state of Illinois, host of Freedom Steel on YouTube. Todd, greatly appreciate your time again. Before the break, we were talking about how the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals has consolidated cases from the Southern District with the Northern District, but also continued that stay on the state's law, so the gun ban's in effect right now. And all of this happening Friday with the state issuing a letter to the U.S. Supreme Court saying, hey, look at this expedited process that the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals is taking with all of these lawsuits against Illinois' gun and magazine ban. And we were anticipating some kind of something from the U.S. Supreme Court today when they issue their orders list. That issue has been made, but what are we finding out here from the U.S. Supreme Court in relation to everything that's happened out of the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals consolidation and so on?
We're not on it. It's Groundhog Day. We have to wait all over again. So Justice Barrett did nothing. The full court apparently has done nothing. I have to go back and look at what happened in the second district for their timeline on this. Now, Justice Barrett could do something on her own yet today or this week. There's another conference at the end of the week, so we could end up on that. But nothing today, but they didn't say no. So
yeah, they didn't say no, and I think that that's an important point here, especially with all of the litigation that's going on, challenging the state and local gun bans from the Southern District to the Northern District, consolidated and expedited hearing. Todd, one of the big questions people have is all this going to be sorted out by the U.S. Supreme Court before that January 1st deadline of registering these so-called, quote, assault weapons with the state government? Is this going to be sorted before then, you think?
I doubt that it's going to be sorted by the Supreme Court by that time. I think that the Court of Appeals may have it sorted out by then. I would wager they will. And like I said, we still have Atkinson and Bianchi hanging out there. So we may not be the first case, but if they take much longer on Bianchi, we could be right in there with Bianchi going up. And depending on how that Court of Appeals rules and ours does, it's going to be interesting. I predict that 2024 is going to be the year of the gun at the Supreme Court.
Todd Vandermyde with us. A few other things to tackle here. I did get those Firearm Transfer Information Program numbers. While we still have a few dates that they have yet to get to me, they did provide a good chunk worth of these data sets, and it shows that at least of the dates that they provided from May 1st through the 6th, there were over 8,400 F-tips just in that span of the numbers that we have. A couple of days that we don't have, there could be thousands more added to that. Does that sound above normal for that time period of about a week or so when it comes to F-tips that are filed with state police, signifying that there's a firearms transfer there?
It does. And I think that if you go back and look at the time around Sandy Hook, you would see the absolute run as to what was going on there as a comparison. I think that those numbers are above normal. Remember, there are 7,000 people under the TRO in Mr. DeVore's cases. So you got to kind of back out maybe some of that. But I think if you took an average over the 2 weeks prior and just took that average number, that would be a good baseline number in terms of where we are. And I think clearly a lot of people who either didn't have the money or had procrastinated took advantage of Freedom Week.
And your thoughts on the governor and the statement that he provided when I asked him last week that nobody's going after anybody, but it's the law that you can't be in possession of these firearms come January 1st because they were possessed after the enactment of the law January 10th.
He's just a disgustingly disingenuous politician. He should know what the law says. He should understand the implications. But, you know, if you go and fill out this affidavit, it's under penalties of perjury, which are a felony, which if convicted, you are, you know, prohibited from owning firearms, period, the end. So I think that there may have to be another challenge to this if the law isn't struck down. I think ultimately it's going to be struck down. And if we have to engage in another round of litigation over this, we most certainly will in the short term.
Well, and I imagine, too, Thomas Magg, when he filed the first lawsuit against the state's gun and magazine ban, it wasn't just on the Second Amendment grounds, it was on Fifth Amendment grounds that you are not to be compelled to incriminate yourself. And Magg telling me back then that, the lawmakers have defined certain weapons as illegal, and having to tell a government agency that you are in possession of illegal weapons violates the Fifth Amendment. But that was put on hold while the Second Amendment challenges were taken up in the Southern District. So we may see that argument come back out in the future, challenging the state's gun and magazine ban on Fifth Amendment grounds. Todd, that's all in the federal court. Tomorrow, we've got the Illinois Supreme Court that's set to hear oral arguments in the equal protections allegations that were brought by State Representative Dan Calkins, separate from the DeVore cases. Those are still being dealt with in the lower courts. But what do you predict we're going to see happen with the Illinois Supreme Court's oral arguments tomorrow?
I'm not making any predictions. It's been an interesting road to this point. I might make some predictions after I hear the oral arguments. But I think that, there have been a bunch of cyber sleuths who have been delving into Justice Rochford. And I think she has a serious issue when it comes to a conflict of interest or perceived bias in front of this case. And with that, I don't think this is going to be the last stop. If they rule against Mr. Calkins, I think that this will be appealed to the United States Supreme Court in lieu of her apparent conflict of interest.
There's obviously a ton of moving pieces. I'll do what I can to update you here every weekday morning on WMAY and with Bishop on Air on YouTube. But Todd, tell people how they can find you with your analysis and your unpacking of all of the things that are happening with Illinois' gun legislation and laws.
Yeah, I have to go do a video after we get off. My YouTube channel is called Freedom's Steel, Freedom's apostrophe S. You'll see a bulldozer in the icon because it's a play on words from building a bunch of new gun ranges at our gun club. And that's the best way to chase me down. You can find me on Facebook, not under Freedom Steel. There is a page for that. But on my own, Todd Vandermyde, I'm pretty easy to Google and find. Well, and I guess on Reddit, they call me the gun Santa.
Well, you got the beard and the hair, and it all matches. But Todd, here, just briefly, react to the two measures that we're seeing advanced at the Illinois Statehouse. House Bill 676 and House Bill 218, the omnibus package dealing with orders of protection and a whole host of other things, but also the measure dealing with providing for the option of civil liability against gun manufacturers in this state. How do you see these things advancing? Are they just kind of position bills?
Well, it's interesting. We have a procedural issue right now because they need they're going to have to waive the posting requirements in the Senate for a committee hearing to get them up and in front of the committee pronto, and then they have to get through the 3 readings. So there is an issue because they started with House bills. I think one of the things with Mr. DeVore's lawsuit is notice they did not find a bill in a cross-chamber, gut it, and play this game again. I think they are sensitive to what Mr. DeVore has raised. On that, I don't think Representative Hirschauer or her ilk are listening to what the Court of Appeals said in Texas about orders of protection. So this is going to be ripe for a challenge because that's a Court of Appeals. That's going to the Supreme Court. But then this whole thing about House Bill 218, they're trying to find a workaround against protection of lawful commerce, where protection of lawful commerce says that if you violate a state law. So they're going to make all these, but here's how crazy this is to get it to civil liability. When they talk about an industry member, they talk about any entity or association engaged in the design, manufacturing, distribution, importation, or marketing of any gun or part. So think about this. Todd wants to design a new gun. I hire Senator Harmon's law firm to sit there and represent me in some legalese about patents and, whatever. They could now be sued. You look at the engineering firm that you would hire to design a part because you don't have in-house. Hey, this is my bar napkin sketch of what I'm trying to do. get me the drawings to make this part. The machine shops that make parts that may not, they're not FFLs. They're just making screws, a roll pin, a spring, could all be sued as a way to shut off the suppliers and subcontractors to the firearms industry, as well as dragging manufacturers and retailers and whoever through this endless cycle of mud. And this is just one part of it. This goes on to them trying to enforce a code of conduct that goes well beyond. It talks about training, that if you do anything to market training, they try to throw a caveat in there for hunting and stuff like that, but they talk about this mandatory, they talk about this militia training, which is what? I mean, where do you draw the line between home defense and, paramilitary training? What's the difference between long range accuracy and a sniper?
Well, obviously, these things we'll see advance possibly at the Statehouse. We'll keep on top of that as well. Todd, I got the note from Zoom that our time's running out unless I want to pay them money to have you and I connect. So I appreciate you taking the time with us, and we'll talk again in the very near future, all right?
Yeah, no problem. They hate the First Amendment as much as they hate the Second now.
Appreciate the call. It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk, 8:53 now from Culver's West on Wabash.
It's time to apply at Culver's West on